attention. This right here is my
Hi, this is Richter, giving you guys with USA Gymnastics, your guys' tip of the month. This month we're going to talk about squat mechanics. First and foremost, we need to be able to move through our hips and create a hip hinge. As a gymnast, you're taught to do certain things in your gymnastics competition where you might tend to be quad dominant with certain movement patterns. That's why today we're going to introduce to you guys a few different movements with squatting mechanics that's going to hopefully allow you guys to develop more of a hip hinge and develop power through the hips. The first thing we want to teach you guys when we're talking about a squat is a squat to a box, okay? So the first thing we need to make sure that you're doing three things when we do our proper squatting pattern. The first thing we want to do is we want to find ourselves with a box that's going to be about 4 to 5 inches right behind our heels. Once we have the box behind us 4 to 5 inches, we all of a sudden have the cue in our mind that we want to sit our hips back. Okay, if the box was right next to our feet, we'd simply sit down to it. I want you guys to think about when you're squatting to push the hips back and to find that box with the hips. That's what we call our hip hinge. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to push my hips back. Second of all, as I go throughout this squat, I want to keep my chest up tall. A lot of times when people squat, they make the mistake of letting their upper body point straight to the ground. We want to keep the chest up proud. We want to keep our eyes up straight ahead. Last of all, we want to make sure that our knees don't cave in. So I'm going to actually push my knees out and create the knees in a straight line right over the heel as opposed to being collapsed inward. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my eyes up. I got my hips ready to hinge back, toes facing straight ahead. I push the hips back, my chest stays up tall, and then I squeeze my glutes as I finish that movement. So hips back, knees out, squeeze the glutes on the way through. And from the side, you guys can tell that I'm actually really reaching back towards the box. I got my heels 4 to 5 inches in front of the box, toes facing straight ahead, eyes up, hands go back, and I sit up. A few of the mistakes that we would make is we don't push back with the hips. If we're not pushing back with the hips, the squat looks like this. And all of a sudden our knees go way past the toes. We don't want to sit all of our weight onto the box like this. So we don't want to go to the box, sit back. Another thing is some people go into the squat and they're like this. Their chest is falling over and their eyes are looking down. We don't want that either. The third thing to stay away from is letting the knees cave in. And that's when people go into a squat and the knees are collapsing in, and what we call a valgus collapse. Once your box squat becomes good enough to where you feel like you got the right movement patterns down, your technique is there, you can progress into the basic box squat in one of two ways. First of all, we have a lower box here that you can use, and you can try to achieve more depth to the squat. It's always a good idea to try to squat as low as you can, as long as you have the mobility and the stability to do so. Second of all, the other way you can progress a box squat is to add, first of all, a light implement that you have as a weight. So here we train with medicine balls. We have medicine balls, we have dumbbells and barbells. For example, we're going to start with the medicine ball or the dumbbell in a goblet position. So what that means is we align ourselves in our proper position. We hold the medicine ball right up here at our chest. We go back into the squat where we reach back. We sit back up and squeeze the glutes through, all while holding the weight right up here in this chest position. The next thing we want to do is we want to use a drill that's going to teach us to push our knees out. So what you can do is you can grab a red loop band or a blue loop band, go ahead and position it right above your kneecaps. So they're not going to be directly on the kneecaps, it's going to be right above. Once we get the band around the knees, this is going to tell me from a neurological standpoint that I want to push my knees out instead of letting the resistance pull me in. My hips go back, my chest is up, and when I'm in this bottom position, my knees are actively being pushed out as opposed to being here, and I stand back up and squeeze the glutes together. So one more full rep is here, hips back through, pushing the knees out the entire time. The last and final progression we're going to talk about is going to be our single leg squat. Once we've mastered the previous bilateral squats, we're going to work on doing our squat pattern from a single leg position. So as we go through this single leg squat, we want to identify a few different technique patterns. We want to remember that we want the hips go back first, the chest stays up tall, and our toes align straight ahead. So we start with the heel, once again, 4 to 5 inches in front of the box. We're going to go ahead and pick up one leg just like this. My chest is up, my hands are out in front, my hips go back, and then I squeeze my glutes through on the finish. When we're doing the single leg squat, we want to make sure again that we don't shift all of our weight completely back on the box. And by that I mean this. We don't want to go down to our single leg squat and completely rock all the way back and then create momentum. We want to simply think about just kissing the box with our hips and then coming back up. Thanks for watching the tip of the month. This month we talked about squatting mechanics and why it's important to develop a hip hinge. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and refer back to the article that we wrote for Technique magazine, where we tried to explain a more thorough explanation of all the squatting patterns.